Thank you, Teradaj. I'm also pleased to welcome Katrina Kosec, also Senior Research Fellow here at IFPRI. She's an applied microeconomist working at the intersection of development economics, political economy, and public economics. Her research focuses on the impact of public investment and outcomes for the poor. She's investigated the impact of decentralization on growth, environmental investments, tax policy, and public service provisions, many of the themes we're talking about, as well as the effects of income inequality on local governments' investments in the poor. Her current work examines how political competition and institutions affect the behavior and aspirations of the poor. Katrina holds a PhD in political economics from Stanford University. Welcome, Katrina.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Ruth, and for everyone being here today. I very much enjoyed hearing Stuti and Ray talk to us about some very important issues. Stuti and her colleagues have put out a tremendous policy report that very comprehensively lays out what we know about making politics work for development. And I think it's a very admirable body of work because it brings together both the empirical and the theoretical literature, as well as looking across disciplines. There's an economics focus, but she takes very seriously political science and other literature on this topic. So it's a very nice synthesis that results in tangible policy lessons. And Ray has given us very important insights about implementing the SDGs from a rights-based perspective and effectively engaging civil society in that process. This involves several things. It involves ensuring that civil society has the space to operate and the right data at its disposal in order to affect change. I think a common message coming out from both speakers is that we can't simply accept political impediments to the pursuit of first best policies and look for second best solutions. We actually need to engage individuals in participatory ways so that we can relax political constraints and actually go after these first best policy solutions. Both speakers also touched on the issue of data. And Stuti very importantly highlights how it's not enough for people to have access to information about what policymakers are doing. They also have to understand the consequences of those actions. Ray importantly discusses how data is not always a good thing. We importantly need to consider whether there is too much or too little of it. Who has data, who doesn't, what's the role of that data, what type of data do we need to collect. So there are really important considerations about generating information and what that information can do. I've got three broad comments to make, sort of questions and comments for both of the speakers. The first is that we've talked a lot about providing information to citizens. But I'm wondering, on the other hand, what about providing information to government? Are there times and ways in which that can be a more cost-effective solution than simply providing information to citizens? Now, we've heard about the notion of transparency, the idea that transparency and giving information to citizens can nurture the sort of healthy political engagement that can contribute to high-quality service delivery. But sometimes information in the hands of service providers themselves, we might think that that could actually have a beneficial impact. In decentralized settings, especially, you often have cases of information asymmetry. And so providing information to government about what citizens want, at what levels, and what types of goods they want can actually help government deliver better. Further, generating information for high levels of government has the added advantage that it doesn't require the types of civic education that you sort of need to make people understand data. It can be difficult because if politicians don't want individuals to have data, they can obfuscate and manipulate that data. Whereas if government has the data, this might be very useful. So I guess the question I'd like to pose for the speakers is, what role might there be for providing information to government rather than just to citizens? And when and where might that be an effective solution? And the second point I wanted to make is, are we being too pessimistic about the potential for non-political citizen engagement? Stuti's report has presented and made the case that trying to increase direct citizen participation in providing public goods has its limitations. We really want government to be providing public services and not force citizens to sort of do this for themselves. But I wanted to raise the question of whether actions by citizens can't actually pressure the government to improve. Citizens, as I mentioned, they know what goods they want. They may know who's best able to provide those goods and at what levels. And them taking over some of the process may actually convey some information to government. It could also put pressure on the government. If people are delivering their own services, they may be resistant to taxes, and the government may need to and want to step in order to play more of a role. And so this citizen collaboration could sort of bring this knowledge to the fore for government. Non-political citizen engagement can also generate information for government. If you think of citizen report cards, for example, about frontline service providers, these report cards could be used by central government to put pressure and help that central government design incentives to make the service providers deliver better. So if they're not doing a good job, then this information from citizen report cards could filter into some sort of a system of performance-based pay for something, for example. I also wonder if frontline providers might be subject to social sanctions. The idea that you are in a community and you have a certain pressure to keep people happy in that community as a result. So I just wonder if maybe we need to not immediately throw the baby out with the bathwater and be a little bit more optimistic about the potential for social accountability interventions to improve service delivery. And I guess the final point I wanted to make is the sort of chicken and the egg issue. We know that transparency can help nurture effective political engagement. But without political engagement, how do we get transparency in the first place? So I think this is a problem. If you have, for example, state-controlled media, do we have roles for external actors? Should we just be depending on the internet and social media to help us surmount problems and get transparency to increase? So I think this is a very relevant question. And I finally wanted to make a mention, an upcoming workshop at IFPRI, some in the audience or their colleagues may be interested in. Tentatively on April 6th of this coming year, we are going to be hosting a one-day workshop where we will have presentations on the topic of harnessing information for accountable rural service delivery. These will be about 20-minute presentations with discussion and Q&A from IFPRI and non-IFPRI people as well. So please stay tuned for that announcement, and I put a flyer out front if you want to take one on your way out. For those not in IFPRI here that want to hear more about it, we'll certainly put you on a list of those who will get the call for papers. Thank you so much.